To the Integrity Sports Podcast, powered by Harper's Tree and Stump Removal. If you have tree trimming, tree removal, or stump removal needs, Harper's Tree and Stump Removal has you covered. They can even haul rock or sand. They can do driveway work and now can do horizontal grinding of large wood debris piles. Give Keith a call at 229-314-2048 or at 938-2412. Harper's Tree and Stump Removal is proud to be a premier sponsor of the Integrity Sports Podcast.
Welcome to the Integrity Sports Podcast, covering local sports in the Southwest Georgia area, creating content that is factual, positive, and informative, promoting efforts by athletes, coaches, and sports administrators. Now, here's your host, Tim Estes.
Good evening. We are live. I'm Tim Estes. I'll be your host, and I am live at the Roman Oven Pizzeria. My co-host, Scott Westbrook, joins me. He's been off-site all day today. Spent a good part of the day over in Perry, Georgia at the Georgia National Fair judging candy. Is that right, Scott?
Yes, candy. Yes. So if I doze off in a diabetic coma midway through, then just, keep going with the show.
Each week, we review the games from the previous week for Sumter County, Southland Academy, and Sly County, and we also preview their opponents for the upcoming week. Scott, we get ready to enter Week 8 of the high school football season, and here's a quick overview of the three teams that we focus on. Sumter County is currently at 2-3 on the season. They're going to travel to Nashville, Georgia this weekend to take on Berrien County. Sly County is at 6-0. They have been the number one ranked team in GHSA Class A Division 1, or rather Division 2, since the first week of the season. They'll have an open week this week. It'll be their second open week of the season. Southland Academy is at 2-4, and they will also have an open week this week. Scott, going to be a light week of high school football in Southwest Georgia.
We've got a lot going on outside of football with the fall. A lot of these schools taking their fall breaks. They're working in the bye weeks, but they're also in the throes and right in the middle of region play. If they've been playing, some people schedule, quality hard opponents in their non-region schedule. Others schedule, I guess, FCS opponents or Division II opponents. And it's about to show whether you're ready to play or not. We're right in the middle of it. Each team's in the area have already played a few region games, but that's what we got now until the end of the season.
Scott, as our teams go into Week 8, we do know a little more about them than we did, early in the season. 5 weeks of this regular season stuff left, and it's going to be crucial in determining what kind of season each of the teams in our area will have.
It is. A lot of times people will sit there and take the first half of the season and will write a team off and say, look, nothing positive can come out of this. We're just going to survive basketball season. But there's story after story, year after year of peak late in the season and got on a run and have started off. I forgot who it was that won the GHSA state championship just a year or two ago and started 4. So I wouldn't. This is really, if you had your druthers, you'd rather have the finish strong in the second half of the season and sacrifice the first half. So I think there's one team in particular we're going to talk about this week that you've got a strong feeling that's about to happen.
Yeah, I really do. Scott, let's start with recapping last week's game for the Sly County Wildcats. They traveled down to Casita to take on Chattahoochee County. Sly County came away with a 56-7 win. Current record now 6-0, still ranked number 1. Tell me your thoughts on the Sly Chatco game.
It was kind of what we really expected or hoped for. Got a little nervous the first drive. It won't really show up in the stats probably, but Chatco had a big play in their first drive and got inside their 5-yard line and looked like they were going to go ahead and get ahead of us early in the game. the next play after that, they had a turnover, fumbled it, and then the bloodletting began at that point. And, but the second half we were, had a running clock, and a lot of the JV guys got in and got a lot of reps. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, the PA announcer was very gracious at the end of the game, wished us luck and hopefully getting a state championship. I talked to Carson. It's funny because you see the kids out there on the field and you don't know what they say, but it drives my wife crazy. So that's the first question she has when Carson comes home that night. What were they saying? What were they saying? And she makes her decision then if she likes them or not, I think. But the reality is, Carson said they were, kind of cutting up with them out there, and they were, as he said, I think they were chill or whatever, which means, they were having a good time out there and exchanging some pleasantries even out on the field. So
quarterback Jay Kanazawa had a great night. We'll call it a great half because he didn't play in the second half. But in only one half of playing time, he was 16 for 19 for over 300 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. What I really liked about the quarterback position, other than Jay's performance, was Jake Little and Blake Weldon, the 2 backups to Jay Kanazawa, also got a good bit of playing time at the quarterback position in the second half. Your son, Carson Westbrook, he was our player of the game on the radio side of things. This time on the offensive side of the ball, Carson had a really good night offensively. He had 4 receptions for 123 yards. Zayden Walker, who was kind of quiet toward the first half of the season, has really started to come on and show his worth lately. Zayden had a touchdown. Jeremiah Rogers, JR, is a guy we've talked a little about. He's didn't play last year. This is his first year as the starting tailback. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. KB Aldridge and Kyler Dupree both had touchdowns apiece. So, Scott, right there, that's 4 different guys that had a touchdown in that game.
That's right. We're spreading it around. And like I said, the JV, when they came in, they kept their foot on the gas and got their real-time game reps, too, against Chatco's first team.
And defensively, Scott, the Wildcat defensive front shut down the chance of a running attack. Chatco only had 29 yards rushing. Most of that was in the fourth quarter when the younger guys were in. And, Scott, here's a crazy stat. If I've gotten this right, Chatco was negative 21 yards passing. So I'm guessing that takes all the sacks into account.
I don't know. Maybe so. I always thought the sacks counted on the rushing yards. But I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't know enough about it to comment really on how that calculation came about.
All right. So this week, the Wildcats will have their final bye week. And, Scott, if we were banged up physically, I'd be inclined to say that this came at a good time. But to my knowledge, the Cats are pretty healthy, and I almost hate to take a week off. When the Wildcats return to action next Friday night, they'll host Taylor County, who, Scott, I know you and I have differing views on this, but I continue to beat the drum that they have a very deceptive 5-1 record, having played all of the lower teams, the lower level teams in this region. I do believe that Taylor County and Marion County will be the teams that'll battle it out for the 4th and final playoff spot in our region. But think about this. Taylor County has yet to play Sly, Macon, Manchester, and Marion, and that's 4 of the top 5 teams in the region.
And like you said, we have disagreed privately and publicly on this. I don't think that I would agree with you that the 5-1 record is deceptive, but not as much as I think you think it might be.
Right.
One of the things that I have tried to remind my son that maybe have fallen on deaf ears is it's funny, living in Taylor County and being involved with the program for so long. It's funny what programs will hang their hat on sometimes. And one thing that Taylor County is, a true Taylor County football fan will be quick to point out to you is the last time Manchester won a state championship in football. And I think it was the early 2000s or late 90s or something. I should have looked it up, but I didn't. But I do remember this. They went undefeated that season, except for Taylor County. They lost to Taylor County. I do remember that. They lost to Taylor County in the regular season. And this week coming up is a prime time for Sly County to be upset because let me tell you, You can tell 16, 17, 18-year-old boys all day long, don't be looking next week to Manchester. Let's handle the most important game is the one we're playing this coming up Friday night. Don't be worried about what Manchester's doing or what we're going to do against them. We got to be worried about this. And they may be having some of the same thoughts and feelings that you and some others are having. Well, look, they haven't played anybody. Yeah, they're 5-1, but that's a paper tiger a record. But I'm telling you, any Friday night, you sit there and you let them come out and do what they did last year early against us and have a good running game. Let them have eating up the clock mentality. Keep the game close, and we could end up finding ourselves, within one or two scores, and a key turnover happening or something like that, and all of a sudden you breathe life into a team that I know has some athletes on it.
Yeah, definitely. Scott, our program tonight brought to you by All South Appraisals, your trusted partner in appraising rural properties in our area. All South Appraisals can handle all types of properties, agricultural, commercial, and residential. Past farmlands to that charming country home. They specialize in rural properties that define the heart and soul of our communities. Their commitment to accuracy and dedication to understanding the unique nuances of rural properties is what sets them apart. They blend modern technology with old-fashioned attention to detail and provide you with an appraisal you can trust. So whether you're a lender, an attorney, an accountant, maybe a real estate agent or a broker, or certainly a property owner, give All South Appraisals a call at 478-837-3818. Again, that's All South Appraisals, 478-837-3818. The Southland Academy Raiders, they're open again this week. Scott, they lost to Terrell Academy 40-21 on Friday night, and that puts their current record at 2-4. Your thoughts on Southland Academy?
Southland Academy, they need to seize the opportunity the second half of this season, like we were talking about earlier. They can finish strong. They can still make it in the playoffs and have a whole new season. They could hit the reset button. They could hit the reset button tonight. And this bye week, like you said, it really, we hope it doesn't hurt Sly. This bye week can do nothing but help Southland, I think. At this point. And so I think that Terrell County was as strong as advertised. Their record was not deceiving. They have been the beneficiary of some administrative decisions in nearby and adjacent counties with their athletic program in the past few years, and it's transcendent in their record and in the field in some state championships. So Terrell Academy, they can let's just put that one behind us and start focusing on the games coming up.
So Lee County West, Terrell Academy quarterback William Massey had a career night throwing the football against Southland. He had 347 yards. He was 17 for 20 with 3 touchdown passes. Southland did, however, control Terrell Academy's rushing attack. They only gave up 76 yards on the ground to the Eagles. Southland quarterback Bank Simmons, he was 5 for 9 in the contest for 98 yards. The Raiders did amass 164 yards on the ground on 36 carries, so certainly very respectable against the 5-0 Eagles. But the Eagles' passing attack was just too much. Receiver Quindon Wright had a touchdown reception early in the first quarter, as well as on the final play of the first half. Terrell Academy led 19-6. And one of the bright spots for the Raiders in the first half was the play of defensive lineman Will Godwin. Will Godwin, in addition to playing a stellar defensive line up front, also had a blocked PAT attempt. So it's good to see Will Godwin playing well for the Raiders. In the second half, Southland mounted an early drive, but Hill Murdoch of Terrell Academy picked off a pass to set the Eagles up in good field position. A few plays later, Massey found Murdoch in the end zone for another Terrell Academy touchdown. One guy that did have a good game for Southland, Mac McMichael, a strong performance running the football for the Raiders. As has been Southland's MO all year, Scott, and you and I have talked about this a good bit. They never give up, and they seem to play their best football in the fourth quarter. They did that again against Terrell Academy. Luke Terra at running back, he had a rushing touchdown. Cooper Boren kicked the PAT. And then late in the fourth quarter, they actually put Cooper Boren in at quarterback, and he ran it in from 3 yards out. So the final score was 40-21 Terrell Academy. So you may ask, what's next for the Raiders? They're open this week, don't have a game, and then they'll take on Brookwood. And, Scott, I think this is a very winnable game. Brookwood right now has a 2-4 record, just like Southland. They'll then take on Valwood, who's a pretty good football team, coached by Brad Wells. Those guys are always good. And then Tift Area. Tift Area is down. They're 0-4-1 right now. Coach Eric Soliday and his staff are struggling this year. And then you and I have talked about this one a lot. Deerfield Windsor is having a very non-traditional down year. Deerfield usually pretty good. They're actually 1-5 right now. So Southland can win, I think, 3 out of their next 4 ball games, maybe even 4. But let's say for sure 3 out of 4 that they get, and that puts them at 5-5 going into the GIAA Class AAA playoffs. And if they can get there healthy, it could turn out to be a pretty good season for the Raiders.
It could. They're fortunate that their schedule now is a little more generous on the back end. Like you said, 3 of those 4 games are very winnable, and Valwood is not out of the question. So this bye week, I think, as much as it, just what I said a few minutes ago, as much as it worries me and you about for Sly, if I was a Southland fan, I'd be tickled to death with it right now.
Yeah, and we've spoken several times about the injuries along the front line for Southland. The 2 Say boys, the older and the younger Say guys, have been hurt, and then they lost their center for a little bit. I think after this bye week, they'll have all 3 of those guys back, and they'll be a little more healthy, and that can't do anything but bode well for the Raiders on the backside of their season.
Definitely.
Another of our sponsors is One Digital. One Digital is a steward of business growth and personal development. Their insurance, financial services, and human resources platforms provide personalized, tech-enabled solutions for a contemporary work-life experience. One Digital resolves real problems for your business and employees by fusing together customized solutions that address employee benefits, HR, and financial services. It's everything all in one. It's One Digital. Contact Will Peterson at 229-347-6289. One Digital is proud to be a sponsor of the Integrity Sports Podcast. So, Scott, that gets us to the Sumter County Panthers. They had a tough one on homecoming this past week. They lost by a score of 40-14 to the Cook High Hornets. That puts Sumter County at 2-3.
You and I both were hoping that Sumter County would pull this one out. I think Cook County just had a good night, and probably Sumter County didn't quite have the night they wanted to. I mean, I think they were both teams that were trying to bounce back and trying to salvage their season. But at this point, like we've said with Sumter County all the time, Coach Will Rogers he's playing with house money at this point. In a lot of cases, I think the people, the fans in the stands, the community, and even the players, and the record shows that they've turned the corner and headed in the right direction. Even though they may have stumped their toe with Cook County, this week's game is very winnable for them. And I won't try to get ahead of ourselves, but we'll address that in just a minute.
The Panthers came into Friday night on a 2-game win streak, and it looked like Coach Will Rogers and Sumter County were on a roll. But Cook High spoiled the Panthers' homecoming with a 40-14 victory. It was a great game through the first quarter, and you and I were keeping up with that from Chatco, and it looked like, man, this one's going to go down to the end. Neither team could mount a scoring drive until the final play of the first quarter, and that's when Cook High returned to punt for the touchdown, and that gave them a 7-0 lead going into the second quarter. In the second quarter, however, Taryn Jones carried the ball in from the 9-yard line. That put Cook up 14-0. But then the Panthers quickly responded on their next drive when quarterback Anthony Tyson found Braylon Terry streaking down the sideline and hit him for a 52-yard touchdown pass, and that cut the lead to 14-7. So At that point, you think, man, this is a ball game. And that was midway through the second quarter. Cook High would add 2 more first half touchdowns. Drew Folsom, Cook's quarterback, hit Kyrie Fuller for a 40-yard touchdown pass. And then right before halftime, McKeever scored his second touchdown of the half on a 2-yard run. And the Hornets took a 27-7 lead into the half. At halftime, congratulations to Savannah Batten. She was named the homecoming queen for Sumter County High School. So congratulations to Miss Savannah Batten. The Hornets picked up right where they left off in the third quarter. Cook added another touchdown in the third period and yet another touchdown to make it 40-7 in the fourth quarter. The Panthers did pick up a fourth quarter touchdown when Cordarian Leverett caught a 9-yard pass from Anthony Tyson, and that was the final score, 40-14. Scott, this week, Will Rogers' group heads down to Berrien. That's in Nashville, Georgia, right outside of Cook, and ought to be a winnable game. Berrien comes into this game at 1-4, and so we feel like it ought to be a very winnable game for Will Rogers and his crew.
It is. I was going to look up and see what the line was on that game. I normally jot that down. I looked at it earlier and I didn't write it down. Let's see. Bear with me just 1 minute. Sumter is a 21-point favorite in that game.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I hope that comes to fruition. That would be nice to see them get back on their
winning ways. Who's your bookie,
ways.
Tim? I might want some of that action. I don't know.
That's right. When you look at Sumter County's remaining schedule, however, Scott, after this week, they then have to travel to Fitzgerald. They'll host Worth County, and they have to travel to Jeff Davis. So got to get this one against Berrien and then hope you can get one of those final 3.
And those are some pretty tall mountains, those last 3 right there. That's, Fitzgerald, while they're not having the season they would like to have, they're still going to be a strong team regardless. And so, but we'll address those when we come to them. But yeah, those are things that you definitely want to look at in the horizon, and get this W in Berrien County while you can, and then worry about those other 3 later on.
Yeah. So no home games in this area this week, Scott. Sly's off, Southland's off. Sumter County going to be down in Berrien. So if you're looking for a high school game to go down to Nashville and support the Panthers. And let's hope that Will Rogers and his staff can bring home a win. Today's show is also brought to you in part by Marty McDonald State Farm Insurance, located at 925 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Americus. You can reach Marty at 928-3686. Get in touch with him or any of his staff to discuss your insurance needs. Marty can also do the discount double check to make sure you're receiving all the savings that are available to you. They even have a life-size cutout of the State Farm guide, Jake. So go by and take a photo with Jake from State Farm. And as always, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Scott, that's the 3 schools that we focus on. There are a few games in our area that I want to talk about. First, let's mention that Sly is off, Southland is off, Marion County also has an off week this week. Taylor County also has an off week. So a lot of folks in this area taking fall break off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they all, I think maybe since it's all in the same in the same area and same region, I think a lot of people have fall breaks too, like you said.
Scott, one of the games that will be pretty easy to predict is Macon County. They'll have to travel over to Central of Talbotton, but no question Macon County, the more talented team out of those 2.
I think that's a safe bet. I wonder what the line is on it. Let me look and see while I got you on.
I'm going to guess in the 40s.
I don't see it. So I don't know. Maybe they didn't even do one on it. Maybe do what now?
Maybe off the chart.
It may, yeah. It may have the computer decided just to pass on that one, but yeah. I think it's a safe bet. Macon County is going to bring a win back to Montezuma on that one.
We did see our neighbors down in Lee County get a huge win last week. They went down to Warner Robins and played at Freedom Field against Houston County. Came up with a big fourth quarter comeback to beat Houston County. This week, Lee County at 5-1. takes on Veterans High School. Veterans from over in the Bon Air area, they're 3-3. What do you think about this one?
I think Lee County is going to win this one easily. Their running back is just having a tremendous season. I think he was like the state player of the week last week. And I heard on one podcast that he had a calf injury and did not take a single snap in practice all week, but went and had over 300 yards rushing against Houston County.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was just an unbelievable story. But the quarterback at Veterans, he's a good friend of Carson's. He unfortunately broke his collarbone last week, so Veterans will have a new quarterback in that game. Senior quarterback is going to be having some sort of surgery to fix his collarbone on that, but his season's over. So, I think this one will be definitely lopsided in Lee County's favor.
Another one that should be fairly close happens on Saturday night down at Hugh Mills Stadium in Albany. You'll have Crisp County, who's currently 4-2, playing Monroe, who's currently 3-2. So ought to be a pretty good one.
Yeah, that's going to be a close one right there. I'm going to lean towards Crisp County. I think that they're going to be a team that's going to come on strong in the second half of the season. They're going to probably put it together and figure it out. They, with a 4-2 record, it's nothing to shake a stick at. And I mean, I haven't checked the rest of their schedule, but they could definitely ease themselves in the playoffs.
I got kind of slapped on the wrist this week, Scott. I was at a meeting on Wednesday, and my friend JoJo Wright from over at Crisp County, who does the JoJo Knows Sports podcast, I said, well, you owe me a steak dinner because Sumter County beat Crisp County. And I'm guessing Crisp is a little down, and he kind of took offense to that. And he said, no, Sumter County played really well, and that was a game where we didn't play well, and they deserved to win that. But yeah, they beat us, but we're not down. We're still in this thing, and we're going to have a good season. So I'm going to go with Crisp County in that one as well. Think they'll take Monroe down in Albany. And then, Scott, you got Deerfield Windsor at 1-5, and they'll take on the Brookwood School from Thomasville. Brookwood currently stands at 2-3.
I'm going to lean towards Brookwood on this just because of the record is a little stronger, and Deerfield Windsor, they haven't showed me anything yet that indicating they're dug themselves out of the hole they're in yet.
I was looking to see if we had anything on the live chat, Scott. Don't see anything coming in yet. Scott, another thing, we don't have a lot to talk about tonight as far as teams in this area, but the Georgia High School Association did some interesting things this week at their board meeting up in Thomaston. They approved what's called bylaw 1.92C. This is a name, image, likeness policy, and it's receiving mixed reviews from plenty of football fans.
It is, and I was able to listen to the GPB podcast where Dr. Hines just took this head on and gave his opinion on it, and it cleared up a lot of things that I was misled on some of the message boards, and I think the typical high school fan reaction when they hear NIL, they think it's going to be just like the college NIL. You're going to have these kids that are going to just make their decision of where they're going to go based on NIL money. I think reality will suggest otherwise as this kind of shakes itself out, because there's so many barriers to it. Excuse me. First of all, the player cannot appear in any of his gear. He can't. I mean, he can, like, if he's like, let's just take a Southland player. He can't wear Southland gear and appear in a milkshake ad for Dairy Queen. They can't do that. Now they can appear in a milkshake ad for Dairy Queen as themselves because it's their name, image, and likeness, but they can't really piggyback off of anything that they've really done with the GHSA or any accomplishments that they've had. And they can't even use their highlights. Like if they make a commercial, they can't even use the highlight of the young athlete, whether it be male or female, in the ad. So essentially, they can take a student and put him in a black Dairy Queen jersey, and maybe people locally recognize him or her as an athlete associated with the school. I think there's probably a few that would come to mind that you and I can think of right now that in our area and the teams we cover, that if they appeared in an ad, somebody would go, oh, that's so-and-so. They're being recruited by such and such, and they're doing this. That right there may happen. But what Dr. Hines said and pointed out, and as a businessman, this makes sense. These people kind of want a return on their investment. And if you're going to sit there, it's not the same type of money that you're going to be offering some kid to go to a particular college or university, because you and I both know the college and university, the coffers at Auburn University are a whole lot different than the coffers at, say, Sumter County High School or Sly County High School or Southland or whatever. So it's not the same it's not the same bag of snakes. And one thing that Dr. Hines pointed out that I thought was interesting and it makes sense to me is the star players may not be the one that are benefiting from this. You may have a young player who, for whatever reason, a young student athlete, for whatever reason, has a strong Instagram following or a strong Twitter following. And they look at that more so than perhaps if you're the star of the team. I mean, you could be the backup quarterback, but have 6,000 followers on Instagram. And Dairy Queen's a lot more apt to ask you to do their ad than the star player who may not have any social media following at all. So,
Scott, let me pause you just a second. I'm going to read you the first 3 lines of this and get your thoughts on it. So this is bylaw 1.92C. The first 3 lines say the compensation is not contingent on a specific athletic performance or achievement. I think that's what you were just talking about. The compensation is not provided as an incentive to enroll or remain at a member school. And the compensation is not provided by the school or any person that's acting as an agent of the school.
The barriers are still there to get into. Like, let's say, for instance, that Sly County booster wanted a kid from Macon County to come over and play at Sly County, and they were going to give them some NIL deal to sweeten the pot or something. Well, you see what you just read off, that it says, can't be an incentive to enroll or can't be acting as an agent. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but I kind of deal in the real world. And you and I both know that's maybe going to happen to an extent, but no more so than it already does. I mean, there's already.
And I'm not sure we'll see a lot of that in the southwest Georgia part of as much as you would maybe up around Beaufort and Gainesville and Flowery Branch in that area.
You're probably already going up on. It's funny that once the college NIL deals started to shake loose and everything, all it did was legalize what was already going on at that level. I don't think there's a whole lot of NIL deals going on under the table right now, other than, you may be luring a kid to leave a particular program to come if it's there's some sort of academic advantage that they're going to get, or if they're going to have a possibility to play for a championship, that may be an incentive. But the reality is you can't just decide that your sophomore year and do it, because you still got to jump through all the hoops at the GHSA. And I hope through all this, if nothing else, that the GHSA starts policing this a little more heavily than they have in the past, because we all can cite examples in the past where schools have presented cold, hard evidence of kids that are living in one county, going to school in another, and didn't play by the rules as far as started, before their
ninth grade year.
Before their ninth grade year, they just in ninth grade they were at one school, in 10th grade they were at another school, in 11th year they were at another school, and you can present that to the GHSA till you blue in the face, but nothing's ever done about it. And there's been frustration to that, and we know of a couple of teams in our region a couple of years ago that happened, and it was frustrating to the coaches and to the fans and everything else. So I'm hoping with this NIL, they decide, okay, we're going to put a little bite in this, since now we're playing with money and stuff like that. Hopefully that Dr. Hines and some of the others will handle those cases a little differently.
And Scott, you mentioned the guardrails that were put in place. Here's some of those that directly from the policy. The first one deals with intellectual property. It says you can't wear your school logo, the GHSA logo, or you can't even wear your mascot when doing an endorsement. No school equipment or apparel can be worn. You can't do it at a member school's facility. So you can't use the school or the football field or the basketball court to do that. And no activities that are in conflict with school policy can be endorsed, such as the tobacco products or alcohol products or controlled substances, CBD, things like that. So there have been some guardrails that GHSA has put into place. And let's make clear that Georgia is the 31st state that has adopted NIL at the high school level. So they've had a lot of examples to look at. And I watched that same podcast today that you watched with Dr. Hines, and I thought he explained it really well.
Oh yeah, he any questions I had or any reservations that I had, he handled. I mean, I felt I'm okay with it. Let's go forward with it, but let's police this stuff that's been going on, and it even goes on at the single A public level where, I mean, a kid, and like I mean, we know of examples in our own region where a kid would play 9th grade year one place and 10th grade year somewhere else, and 11th grade somewhere else, and and it's just no real follow up or clarification or anything like that. Once you submit it to GHSA.
Another thing that Georgia High School did at the recent executive meetings was reclassification. And Scott, the reclassification will start in 2024, 2025. 2024, 2025. And there will no longer be a Class 7A, no longer a Class 7A. So they'll do away with the largest classification. And then private schools in Class 1A through 3A will be playing regular season ball. There you are. Scott, Class 1A through 3A and private schools will play for a state championship that will be separate from public schools. The public schools will have a state championship in 6A, 5A, 4A, 3A, 2A, 1A Division 1, and 1A Division 2. But the private schools will only have one state championship for member schools who are combined, Class A through Class 3A, which if you took the current numbers in GHSA, that's only 23 football playing schools. But that's given a few folks some heartburn.
I'm sorry I dropped off there for a minute, Tim. I went to move my piece of paper and hit my mouse pad, and that's what kicked me out of there. So I apologize for that. But yeah, now this one right here I think is going to have some rippling consequences. This decision, not as much as the NIL. I think the NIL is going to be fine in the long run because so many states are doing it. But this reclassification, especially when you're dealing with a lot of the smaller private schools and the threshold, we may see some pushback or some unintended consequences from this.
Yeah, and what I understand, Scott, this came from about 40 GHSA public schools, mainly in Class A, that were threatening to pull out of the GHSA if they didn't do something about these private schools, because really they are at an advantage in the fact that they can recruit kids from pretty much anywhere in the area.
Right. And then just what we were talking about a few minutes ago, and you sit there and you got these kids that are 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade years, they're playing at different schools, sometimes 2 and 3 different ones. And we've got an unofficial transfer portal that needs to be looked at and needs to be handled. So, and then I think that's the private schools definitely have an advantage over that as opposed to the public schools.
So, Scott, that takes us to the Booger Bottom wrap up, brought to you by the Booger Bottom Yacht Club. They've been voted numerous times as the best burger in Sumter County. They are located on Lamar Road on the banks of Lake Blackshear. Go by and see Miss Sue, Rick, Russ, Renee, or any of their staff, and let Booger Bottom wrap you up with the best burger in Sumter County. Our only area game this week, Scott, is Sumter County from Region 1, Class 2A. They travel to Berrien County to take on the 1-4 Berrien Rebels. I think the Panthers pick up a win on the road. What about you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think this is a good win for them, and we'll even up. They'll be playing 500 ball from this point on and roll into the tail end of their season on a positive note.
So, Scott, that wraps up our show for week 8. As we look ahead, what are your final thoughts?
Just enjoy our week off. Tap the brakes, everybody. Reset. If you got any pressing injuries, let's get them fixed. If you got any weaknesses that we need to work on, now's the time to do it. Probably we can point the finger back to ourselves with this podcast. Some of our weaknesses we might going to tweak in the bye weeks, but I'm anxious and looking forward to the tail end of the season.
And we want to thank you for making the Integrity Sports Podcast a part of your weekly routine. We certainly want to thank our sponsors, which are Harper's Tree and Stump Removal, Marty McDonald State Farm Insurance, All South Appraisals, One Digital, and Booger Bottom. Of course, it's always nice to be here at the Roman Oven Pizzeria. We thank Anthony and his staff for always treating us well and feeding us a good dinner. And we hope that you'll come by one Thursday. By the way, we are hoping to get Wyatt Halstead, one of the offensive and defensive linemen from Sly County. Wyatt shot me a text tonight, Scott, and said he and Sam Forehand are making a trip out to Hutchinson, Kansas this weekend. I know your son going on a visit up to UMass in the Boston area. So it's good to see a lot of our local athletes getting the attention of colleges, and want to wish them the best of luck. Scott, we had about 1,300 views this past week, a little down from where we've been over the last few weeks. We've been averaging close to 2,000, but we're available on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and several other podcast and social media platforms. We really encourage you to go watch us on YouTube and hit the subscribe button. Go to the Integrity Sports Podcast page and hit the subscribe button. Scott, I appreciate you joining me. I know you're probably full from judging all the good candy. By the way, who was the state champion in candy at the Georgia National Fair?
It was a maple walnut bonbon. It was it's best described as about like a piece of candy you would get out of a Russell Stover's candy box. It had maple syrup, walnuts, powdered sugar, all that kind of stuff rolled in there, dipped in dark chocolate. And you see my mouth watering just talking about it again. So that was the one that won the category that I judged along with 2 other judges. But it was the one that came out on top after they tallied all our scores.
And I know you're judging a few more things. Tell me real quickly, what else do you have at the Georgia National Fair this week? I was supposed to do deviled eggs, but I got booted from that for whatever reason. But I think your wife may have had something to do with that, Scott.
Probably so. Yes, I'm sure. I've got the Georgia peanuts, and let me look and see. Hold on, I'll let you know. I forget the other one. I've got the Georgia peanut category and banana pudding.
Oh wow!
Yeah, banana pudding. So
I may have to join you for that one.
You can watch. I'll let you watch. You can watch. You can watch. I'll give you a good play-by-play. But there's. You gotta have a real advanced palate like my own to really be able to, discern, a mediocre from a really good banana pudding.
I'm not advanced in many things, but sweets, I'm a connoisseur.
You might not be able to tell me by looking at me, but I'm kind of a dessert man myself.
Yeah. Again, we want to thank you for watching the Integrity Sports Podcast. For my good friend Scott Westbrook, I'm Tim Estes. Thanks for watching. So long, everybody.